Donald Trump is the worst president in recent American history, not only due to his policies, which are a huge reason, but because of how he got into office by betraying everyone. The enthusiasm around Trump in 2024 was magical, and it felt like he would save Western civilization. But it was too good to be true, and only a few people on the right like Nick Fuentes recognized it. But let's start with Trump's appeal. In 2016, he ran for office as the outsider. He was the first one in the Republican primary to condemn the Iraq War, which was really controversial at that time. He exposed others like Jeb Bush or Marco Rubio, saying that Marco Rubio is a puppet of Miriam Adelson. He also said that he was neither pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. He said that he would create a deal benefiting both parties. And due to his celebrity status and his charisma, he wasn't an out-of-touch politician, but he participated in events and trends, making him a man of the people. What confirmed this notion about him was the fact that 60% of his funding came from small donors. And for that he was hated by the establishment. The media constantly attacked him, and establishment Republicans like J.D. Vance didn't even vote for him. They voted for a CIA agent named Evan McMullin, who ran as a protest candidate against Donald Trump. So what made Trump popular and what convinced me to support him from 2023 when I got into politics all the way until the 2024 election is that he was an outsider opposing the establishment who was funded by himself and the people. The issue with that is that this was true for the 2016 election, but not so much for the 2024 election. Nonetheless, most of the clips circulating online which promoted Trump were from that time. But one thing people didn't talk about was how his first term went. Trump's promises were to build a wall and to drain the swamp, which means to eliminate corruption, entrenched bureaucracy, and special interest influence. He didn't deliver on any of them. But who he did deliver for was Israel, since he pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. So when Trump got into office, it changed him from a man of the people to your average politician. Now we can speculate whether the 2016 run was all fake and he was always just like this deep down. I personally think that he's a big narcissist and he just does what makes people like him. Now over time, the people changed from the American population to his donors and friends like Mark Levin. But let's talk about the 2024 election, since I experienced it live myself. Unlike the 2016 and 2020 elections, where I was 8 and 12 years old. In 2024, Donald Trump ran on countering the flaws or perceived flaws of the Biden administration. Those were mass deportations because 10 million illegal immigrants entered the country during Biden's presidency. No new wars, since he perceived the war in Ukraine as the indirect fault of Joe Biden. Anti-woke agenda, since woke was at its height due to support from the Biden administration. Examples of this were men in women's sports like Leah Thomas or drag queens in elementary schools. And the last thing was the president himself. It is no secret that Biden was highly incompetent and physically unfit, which Trump brutally exploited up until Biden dropped out of the race. Then he did the same thing with Kamala Harris. Now the important thing here is that first of all, those were all policies to oppose the current unpopular regime, which usually is popular to do, and second of all, those were the policies he wanted you to know about. There were a lot of policies which would have been very unpopular with the MAGA base, but he hid them and influencers just shrugged it off as not that big of a deal. But the ones who weren't blinded by the hype listened and knew what was coming. Another thing which was pretty obvious looking back is that all these former anti-Trumpers like J.D. Vance, Ben Shapiro and Shabbos Kestenbaum suddenly were really supportive of Trump, which meant that they either had a change of heart or that Trump wasn't the same anymore. And I don't need to tell you which one of these options is true, since Trump's donations also changed. It used to be 60% from small donors, but now it was 60% from big donors. One of the most notable being Miriam Adelson giving Trump $100 million. I personally didn't really support Trump for president during early 2024, as I found RFK Jr. more appealing, but then he dropped out, endorsed Trump, and got promised a place in the administration by Trump. So I thought the administration would be amazing since you would have Trump's conservatism and immigration policies combined with RFK's environmentalism and health policies. Now, as we all know, the second Trump administration turned out very horrible. An important rule which you need to memorize is TACO, meaning Trump always chickens out. I won't go into all the failures since the video would be too long, so I'll cover the 4 main ones. The first failure was his cabinet picks. J.D. Vance, who hated him, Marco Rubio, who supposedly was a puppet of the Adelsons, Pete Hegseth, who hates Catholics, and many more. He's not draining the swamp with this one. Then came the tariffs. The tariffs were wrongly and shallowly calculated. Instead of looking at certain products and industries, they just put everything together and made one single figure per country. Then came the tariff war with China. Both countries were raising their tariffs ad infinitum, and then Trump chickened out, begging Beijing to stop raising their tariffs. Even worse, he did those tariffs in such a stupid way that it caused the markets to fluctuate and the economy to fall. Not to mention that it was somehow illegal and overturned by the Supreme Court. The next thing were mass deportations. So in the first term he failed at building the wall, which would have stopped illegal immigration from Mexico forever. So do you think he would at least do the largest mass deportation effort in history like he promised? But he didn't even do that. Just a mere 300,000 deportations. The worst part about this is how he did it. Instead of doing it low-key like all the presidents before him, he just had to do a big show to satisfy his base, but most importantly to satisfy himself. This instead caused huge protests all across the countries, which led to these deportations becoming less popular, so Trump chickened out instead of doubling down. And the worst failure was his no new wars policy. Literally 6 months after becoming president, he joined the 12-day war in Iran at the demand of Benjamin Netanyahu, who visited Trump 5 or 6 times in his second term already. And now he started a real war with Iran, where he chickened out again. This just goes to show how Trump literally betrayed everyone. Everyone except his donors and Israel. He always uses some excuse, but he literally has no excuses since he has the Senate, the House, and the Supreme Court under Republican control. He could literally fulfill every single promise. A wall costs only $20 billion, while a corporate tax cut costs hundreds of billions, as does the war in Iran. To call him a fascist, which is technically true depending on the definition you use, would be an insult to fascism, since every fascist would beat the living hell out of him. Do you think Hitler, Mussolini, or Franco betrayed their people like this? I think that this is what makes him worse than a fascist, because the fascists actually care about their people. But this is a topic for another video, since there's a lot about fascism and Trump that most people aren't aware of. So I hope that Trump loses the midterms and that he and everyone in his administration gets impeached and goes to jail for corruption, treason, and insider trading. MAGA must die so a true America First movement can arise. I'm Slovak Reuper and I'll see you next week.